It is now my great pleasure to introduce Melinda Salter, the Vice President of Sustainability at North Carolina State Employees Credit Union in Raleigh, North Carolina. Go Canes. Melinda is going to moderate our panel of experts on how climate change is driving business transformation. Welcome. Adaptation and mitigation strategies, trends for 2024, and data-driven developments. With her diverse academic, professional, and practical experience, Melinda is dedicated to promoting sustainability within SECU by implementing cultural and behavioral changes among employees and members. Welcome, Melinda.
So yes, I'm very privileged to be here today. I've got a wonderful panel who I would love to bring up now. Garrett Jones, Monica Beltz, Jean Pogue, Worku Gachu, and Sophia Villarreal. The name of this panel today, again, is From Climate Resiliency and Adaptation Strategies to Introducing Green Products and Growing Social Purpose. We're going to be looking at 2024 trends in sustainability. I'd like to introduce everyone. I'd like to give you the opportunity to introduce yourselves. Sophia, would you like to go ahead and tell us what your role is and who you're with?
Sure. Hi, I'm Sophia Villarreal, Program Manager at the Global Sustainability Program at UNFCU. I'm very excited to be here. Pretty much what I do, I lead the ESG strategy and frameworks at UNFCU. I have extensive experience at international development organizations such as the North American Development Bank, the IFC, World Bank Group, and I'm really excited of how we can integrate climate risk into project decisions, and as well as develop ESG frameworks in a way that we can help each other in the credit union world. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Worku Gachu. I lead Visa's North America Inclusive Impact and Sustainability work. And so what that means is my team tries to leverage Visa's brand, our products, our services, our technology to drive environmental impact and social impact. Really honored to be here today. Thank you for the invitation and looking forward to the discussion with our co-panelists.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jean Pogue. I'm the North American rep for the Global Alliance for Banking on Values. We're a network of 70 values-based banks and credit unions around the world. My job is to work with our 15 members in North America and help them continue on their journey towards people, prosperity, and planet.
Good morning, everyone. Garrett Jones, Senior Director of Corporate Sustainability at Delphi. We support credit unions and corporations across North America transition and really navigate the complexities that most companies are facing relative to sustainability, in particular climate change. So excited to be here with this esteemed panel.
Aloha. I'm Monica Beltz. I'm from the island of Kauai in the state of Hawaii. I'm the CEO of Kauai Federal Credit Union. It might say Kauai Government Employees Federal Credit Union, but we simplified our name and now we are just Kauai. We are a CDFI credit union, community development financial institution. We're an MDI minority and we're an LI low income. Work in a very rural community with a lot of the indigenous and folks with the origins in Hawaii, working to address huge community issues that are happening on our island right now.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. So to get started, I'd like to start with a very high level question just to sort of get us going. And Jean, I'd actually like to start with you on this. What is the role that credit unions hold in addressing climate change?
That's a really good question. Credit unions are founded by, governed by, and focused on members. So they are in a very unique position to work directly with people in their communities to address climate change. So what can they do? Well, they can start with understanding what your members can do to reduce their own carbon emissions and offer credit products that address that. We have a credit union member in Vancouver, Van City Credit Union, for example. It's a large credit union, about $40 billion. A couple of years ago, they made a public commitment to get their entire loan portfolio to net zero by 2040. Now imagine how difficult that is because you have to work with every borrower to figure out what their carbon emissions are, how they can reduce them, and how the credit union can provide service to make that happen. And with them, they are very clear. It starts with data. How do we figure out how to even measure the carbon emissions within our loan portfolio? So they're working on that. They're working with PCAF to figure that out. I'll give you one other example that I think is worth thinking about. I have a member in Decorah, Iowa. Decorah, Iowa is in the northwest corner of Iowa, which those in the US know is a very red state. Their loan portfolio is quickly growing to be a sustainable energy portfolio. They're doing solar lending, both commercial solar lending as well as residential, and they're making loans for wind farms. Now, why would a small bank in Iowa do that? You know, in a farm community, an agricultural community, it doesn't mean that they've given up on mortgages. And by the way, their town is about 15,000 people, so we're talking really small. The reason they're doing that is their community is made up of small farmers, many of whom are aging. Some are in their 70s and they have no retirement funds. They don't make a lot of money. But what do you know? You put 2 wind turbines on a farm and that's the retirement for the farmers. They can stop farming and live off the income from those leases. That's what's motivating Decorah Bank, and that's what could motivate credit unions.
Thank you for that. That was very interesting. My next question is, looking ahead, how do you foresee the role of credit unions evolving in relation to climate change, resiliency, and adaptation strategies? In what ways do you expect credit unions to integrate sustainability goals into their overall business strategies in 2024? Would you like to take this, Sophia?
Yes, I can go ahead. Hi, everyone. So I would say, as several people mentioned earlier, credit unions have it on their DNA. We're serving communities, we're serving disadvantaged people. So that's already there. I would say the first step, as UNFC has done, is working on the inside. What are the effect of our operations regarding sustainability? You cannot preach to others if you don't do it yourself. So internal operations are key before I start moving forward with, of course, PCAF and other more elaborated framework. So some examples at UNFCU, we've been climate neutral since 2016, as they mentioned earlier. We have 91% of our paper comes from certified sources. 51%, we have reduced our paper usage by 51% since 2019 up to 2022. So you need to show it by doing it. And I really believe that all of these exercises that we've been doing, that we portray actually in our impact report, if you're interested, there's much more than that. We have 12 impact goals. These are just few of them. Another one relevant, I should say, is that we've been providing surveys to our vendors so that, and these surveys are relevant to sustainability, ESG topics, so that we're sure what's going on with where we're providing our money, right? Because that's not on the vendors, but that's on us. So we provide these surveys, 100% of them are fulfilled by our vendors. And I should probably say that more than 50% of these surveys come with a grade A, which is really a grade for, I shouldn't say we're not grading our vendors, but we're grading ourselves that our money goes to these really good partners. And it's been an effort. Some vendors were not at level A, but they moved there with our cooperation. So it's really all about partnerships, I should say. And besides, this is all internal operations. I think after there's been that effort in a credit union of internal, you need to move towards products. And of course, also consider, as the previous speaker mentioned, how does climate change affect your credit union? So that way you close that loop. It's not only how the credit union affects the world, right? It's also how climate change, the physical risk and the transition risk affect the credit union. And that way you close this
this loop. And I'm gonna stop because I can talk forever about this. If there's more time, I can elaborate further.
That's excellent. I think you've done a lot of really great initiatives. So thank you for that. On the other side, we've got a lot of credit unions that are just getting on the path. And I was wondering if any of you could contribute to like telling us what the barriers might be, what challenges might these credit unions face in adopting initiatives and how they might get started.
There we go. Perfect. Yeah, I could jump in. We've heard this already, but you can't manage what you can't measure. And I think that's fundamental, is taking stock. So one of the first things that we recommend is the concept of a materiality assessment. And what that really is engaging your stakeholders. So firstly, identifying them, the communities, your members that you serve, your employees, and engaging them in a conversation to understand what is most important to them from an environmental and a social perspective. And then from there, you can start to shape your strategy and build your products and services based on the needs of your local community. Last thing that I'll say is credit unions, by their pure DNA, have supported the communities in which they operate to create resiliency and thriving communities. And I think that this actually presents a very unique opportunity. And I know Taylor had addressed that in his previous presentation, that this is a fantastic opportunity for credit unions to really understand the local communities in which they operate. So that would be kind of one of the first things that I would say.
I'm going to piggyback off of that, Garrett. So we're a small credit union on an island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. So if you look at a globe and you find the big blue area and the little speckled dot right in the middle, that's us. So if and when a natural disaster or a disaster of any kind hits us, it takes days upon days, if not weeks, to have any kind of response. We saw that on Kauai for Hurricane Iniki, which was a Category 5 hurricane in '92. And the hurricane was so strong that it blew off all the indicators. So nobody knows really how big it was. But it wiped out our economy for over a decade and our entire island. And it took a long time to get electricity back, just the basics. So about 3 months into being CEO on Kauai, we had historic floods in 2018, and we received record rainfall in the United States in a 24-hour period. We received about 50 inches of rain. It all hit in about 3 hours, not 24 hours. So we woke up the next morning to the entire North Shore underwater. Our credit union is government employees, so all of the first responders on our island. Many of us, including myself, come from the first responder world. So if you guys heard the term financial first responders during COVID, we were kind of way ahead of that. So we responded honestly, like on jet skis, saving lives as a credit union. When you're a small credit union embedded that deep in your community, these climate issues are forefront. They're not just some theory or some idea or a maybe if one day. We know that they're part of us, and every single issue that hits us hits our children, hits our neighbors, hits our schools, hits our friends. So as a community, as a very small community, we've been able to band together and say, we need to build resilience. I'm sure you've all heard of the tragic Lahaina fires, right? We as an island community, as an island nation, need to build resilience because we're all we have. And our credit union gets that, our community gets that. We're building out an economic resilience center right now with a biomimicry lens, and we're going way back in time. And we're saying there was a time on this island where the economy was thriving, the social foundations of the people were thriving, and the planet, the land was regenerating itself. Decisions were made based on 8 generations before you and 8 generations after you. It's a cooperative model that existed for over 1,000 years on Kauai. So we're trying to step way back and pull all of that brilliant engineering and those systems that were resilient against all of the climate changes and were resilient against the human changes, and bring it forward to today and say the last 120 years, the economic model is failing us. But if you go behind that 120 years, you will see an economic system that was producing a thriving economy with thriving people and thriving land. It's dramatic what's happened since then. The reef system is nearly dead. My children and nephews just got their PADI scuba license. Any scuba divers here? Yeah. They came out of the water and said, the reefs are dead. We saw the pictures in the PADI book. They look nothing like what we just saw underwater. Mom, why are the reefs dead? Oh, sit down, Gen Z. I'll walk you through it, right? Prudent questions. So all that to say, we're seeing it on a small island, and we believe we can change the economy on our island because it's been changed before into a more regenerative model, but it will take a village. It will take all of us. And we're willing to do that as a cooperative, as a credit union, and as a community.
Thank you for that. It's so impressive how you can have such a direct impact on your members. Really, thank you for what you do. I'd like to continue talking about the social aspect and the impacts that we can have. So, as you know, social purpose is integral to credit unions. How can we leverage our unique position even further with local communities, perhaps where we don't have the ability to be as close as our members, as you may be in Kauai, to drive sustainable initiatives and social purpose movements? So perhaps, Worko, would you like to respond to this one?
Hello, great. Well, I first wanted to give our credit union leaders a chance. You know, we have a unique role, and then happy to follow up, but any of our.
Well, Jean, I'm sure you've seen example after example across the world. So kick it off, please.
I'll just give you a couple. There's a financial institution in the UK called Unity, and they made a decision that in order to help their community get more energy efficient and save on carbon emissions, that they would donate or create a pool of 25 million pounds that would be available to their borrowers as a loan subsidy to help finance weatherization and energy conservation members. Credit unions, at the end of the year, you make decisions about your dividends. Well, there's no reason why you have to give those back individually to members. You could also pool them and give them back in the form of some kind of loan subsidy for climate emission reduction loans. So that's one idea. Another example is Banco Sol down in Honduras. It's very interesting. And as you know, Honduras is one of the poorest countries in the Caribbean. And what they decided to do was to help finance and subsidize electricity distribution, because individual solar generation can happen at the individual level, but if it's not connected to some kind of grid, there's no backup when there's no sun or when there isn't enough storage. So they're financing that. That's another example. And a third example is Bandesol in Dominican Republic. And what they're trying to do is finance individual homeowners to put solar on their rooftops, and also to allow them to create the methods to create clean water. Clean water is a big problem there, and they don't have a just general water purification system. So they're helping their borrowers create that through their lending. So there's many ways that credit unions, again, you are closest to your members. No other financial institution has that kind of intimate relationship with members. And so it behooves you to be forward-thinking, front runners, inventing new ways to help them become more climate conscious and less carbon emitting.
I would like to add something, piggybacking on Monica a bit, on the concept of community. It's kind of the same for a credit union. You need to have a team of volunteers. If not, it's impossible for a team of, I've spoken with several credit unions around, a team of 2, team of 3, team of 1. You need to start integrating these concepts in the staff so that then everything can start working together in harmony, as Aloha means. So if you don't have this, it cannot work in silos. So I just wanted to mention that. And then in regarding to products and how unfortunately we might not be as close as in the example of an island, At the UNFCU, we have a closing incentive for energy efficient mortgages. So that really can give even if it could be small, if you think in comparison to what a mortgage is, it can help the person feel that sense of achievement and also reflect on what they are doing. So that's one simple example. Another one, of course, we have an impact share certificate. As you know, as the children of Monica mentioned, the new generation really care about this. So this impact share certificate is for environmentally friendly projects, such as transportation, water, renewables, etc. So of course, there's opportunity. We have lending for energy efficiency projects as well as solar panels. So yes, just wanted to mention those there.
That's great. Thank you very much. Did you want to add something, Monica?
Yeah, as a small CDFI, I think the opportunity is now to really exercise that P6, right? The cooperation among cooperatives. So Kauai has a utility co-op, KIUC. It's the only island that has a co-op for our utility. And over the past 30 years, we've brought our island to about 70% renewable energy. It will soon be about 90%. And so it's interesting to always hear the talk about solar because that was so like last decade for us. The market's been completely saturated in Hawaii. We had public-private partnerships with the utility co-op and the solar manufacturers and installers. And so most of the island has solar. A huge project. So this is where like credit unions can really get behind the momentum, right? There is tremendous funding coming down. There's motivation in so many sectors to drive things forward and like really understanding in our communities, where is the energy? Where are the resources? Where is the priority? And get behind that and involved in that. We're capital. We're community owned capital. So we get to dictate our fate as a community. We own our little microeconomy with our capital, and we should be infusing that capital, directing that capital toward the energy of that which we want to see, right? This futuristic approach that Taylor was speaking to. So one example on Kauai is our cesspool, our wastewater issues. We have cesspools all over the island. Talk about reasoning behind the coral reef devastation, right? Our Economic Resilience Center is positioned right on the reef, which means we'll be underwater soon. So we're trying to go up a little bit. But the reef system out there is devastated. So there's a lot of energy behind how do we convert these cesspools? This is not an easy challenge to solve. There are a lot of people at the table who've been trying to solve this for a long time. Our job is to sit at the table with our community to solve this. We need hundreds of millions of dollars. We happen to be a financial institution connected to a cooperative of financial institutions with access to tremendous capital. So we can navigate these fields to find this capital and bring it. Although we're small, we've got big brothers and sisters all over the world, all over the nation, who are more than willing. Talk about picking up the phone and calling a few friends and saying, hey guys, where do I find a couple $100 million for my community to do this? How do I build a product for these folks to convert their cesspools? How do I collateralize that product? I need help. There's not an encyclopedia. There's not a how to do for dummies this work, right? No one's an expert in addressing climate challenges like we're seeing today. So call a friend, get some help, listen to other examples and models, and that's the way forward.
It's so true. Sustainability is about partnerships. And I love that that's the attitude in credit unions, because that will really drive change that we need. Worko, I do now want to circle back to you because you do have some consumer research from Visa that you can bring to the table about sustainability.
Yeah, thank you. But I mean, Monica's really selling Kauai. Yeah, I think the next meeting should be on her island next year. So I'm just putting it out there. But yeah, so it's, where Visa has a unique kind of role and position, right? We partner with credit unions. We understand and respect the important role that they play, but the lens in which we approach our sustainability work is twofold. It is opportunity and it's also responsibility. To give you some stats from behind the scenes, right? Visa last year processed $12 trillion worth of payment volume. That is 192 billion transactions a year. 30,000 transactions a second with 4 billion consumer endpoints with credentials. With that scale, we see enormous responsibility, right? But we also see an opportunity to shape how people approach and understand, right, their behaviors and their habits and what it means for the environment. And, with that opportunity, we've looked at certain consumer trends that we've seen. The biggest is around Gen Zs and high households with incomes over $120,000. Gen Zs, we see 82% of Gen Zs with a leading interest of wanting to apply for a sustainable focus card. We see 67% of households with incomes at 120,000 or higher wanting a sustainably focused card. So those two consumer segments are approaching these issues from a different perspective. Gen Zs are looking to take action with respect to the environment, while the household incomes over 120,000 are looking to protect the environment. We also took a deeper dive into what are some specific features within a sustainable focus card that could be of interest to consumers. So at the top was card materials. There's a strong desire for card materials to change. We recognize that card materials will change over time. They must. The other two pieces was carbon calculators. People want to understand how their spend is impacting the environment. So we saw 62% of consumers really driving for that feature. We saw 47% of consumers wanting features that will allow them to offset their carbon emissions. So what are certain, projects that have been, globally sourced that are approved with approved methodologies and offsets, and providing those on a platter for consumers? We saw a real growing demand. But what's important here, and Yama talked about it as well in our opening remarks, is the connection to business growth. Right. Jean, you brought up Van City. Van City is one of our great partners, and they were one of our first implementers of our ecolytic sustainable solution. And what we saw, with that product, we originally launched it in Europe, and we're now bringing it to the US. And in Europe, we saw actually a 10% increase in spend and double the app usage. That increase of spend was because of the higher quality products people were buying that last longer, that are better for the environment. And that double the app usage was the stickiness of people wanting to go back day in, day out and understand what their daily spend was and what that impact was on the environment. And so there's a real correlation between, the business opportunity and the environmental impacts that come alongside that as well.
So interesting. Thank you for sharing that. I want to touch base on one final thing before we probably get around to taking some audience questions. So technology, we're in a world where everybody's talking about generative AI. We're looking at climate modeling, scenario analysis, et cetera. How do you see technology helping to promote sustainability within the credit union industry?
There's so many different possibilities that do exist, obviously, with technology and supporting credit unions as they start to support their community's transition to a low carbon future. I would say a couple of the first things that come to top of my mind would be around climate and understanding the climate risks associated with your lending portfolios. So there's a host of technology and data crunchers, if you will, that are able to support credit unions as they look to understand what are the climate related risks. And as we talked about a little bit earlier, Taylor noted that they're the physical risk, but just as important, the transition risks, and these transition risks that will impact the lending portfolio. So that would be kind of one of the top things for me. And then the second would be the actual assessing of your emissions. So in particular, the financed emissions associated with your lending activity. So two kind of key areas to kind of help at the beginning of a credit union's journey and using the technology to support that. So.
That, so I'm wondering, do you see, so we know the issue of greenwashing. Would any of you like to address how we can tackle that and help credit unions be transparent in their reporting and kind of stay true to the message that we're sending out there?
Just from what we've seen, given Visa's kind of, excuse me, global positioning, is it's been really interesting talking to my counterparts in Europe, right? They cannot say the word sustainability, carbon offsets, anything publicly unless there is methodology provided behind each of those statements that proves that it's factual. They are terrified to say it. Where here, you can say whatever you want. It is just such a funny dichotomy. And what we expect is that some of those restrictions will make its way across the pond here in the US. And so we, in preparation for that, a lot of the work that we're doing with Vancity and Ecolytic, for example, right, is providing the tools to demonstrate on the back end how we're actually providing those verified offsets, right? Another example is our partnership with a technology company called Plan B, where we are helping small businesses capture the full scope of their carbon emissions, right? I think many of us in this room know that, you know, a significant amount of B2B payments actually happens off of the card rails, right? It's through ACH and other methods. And so how can we really take a holistic view of a small business's full account, right, bank account, and understand what are the particular emissions that are from that bank account statement? But then it gets a little more complicated when, you know, someone's paying for their monthly utility, but they're actually using solar. So should they get credit? How is that monitored? And so there's a lot of work that we leverage AI and other tools on the back end to ensure that we're capturing holistically with proper methodology to ensure that those claims of greenwashing actually don't have any merit.
I think we've got about 5 minutes left. It might be a good time to take some audience questions. I believe we've got someone available walking around with a mic.
With you, Syed, and while everybody in the room thinks if they've got a question they want to follow up.
Who'd like to take this? Garrett?
Yeah, regarding the data models so just so I can understand that actually support identifying what the true impact is of the sustainable investment. I mean, there's a host of key performance indicators that can be taken into consideration. As far as a data model, I don't have any right off the top of my head. Well, yeah, PCAF, obviously the Partnership for Carbon Accounting Financials, is a methodology for determining the emissions associated with a lending instrument. So your financed emissions. So I think this comes back to Woku's earlier point about using defensible methodologies to determine the sustainability of your lending product. So yeah, that would be definitely one example that would come to the top of my head. Thank you, Jean.
Sorry. Would like to add something quickly. So yes, I think the question was about reviewing the actual project. I don't think that exists so far. The methodologies for accounting emissions, as Garrett mentions, are there. Similarly with the TCFD for the climate risk. So, but I don't think that exists of reviewing something after it was done. I think that was the question. Not that I know.
There was an element of that question about how do credit unions fund their sustainable initiatives, products, et cetera.
In theory, So we're a CDFI credit union. So the luxury there is it's a little bit of a resilient revenue model, and that interest income from lending is a good portion of the revenue model. And then side funding from either CDFI fund, foundations, government entities, or social programs that we're running fund a tremendous amount to. I think we're going to learn a lot about the greenhouse gas fund later today. That is going to be a huge opportunity to help build capacity and finance these types of initiatives, and also a technical capacity and training behind that. That'll be, billions of dollars coming down to credit unions who are integrated in their community and committed to these issues, even if they're not experts, right? Because we're all babies in this. And there's tremendous other funding opportunities through whether it's government, foundation-led. Again, it's that idea behind, get behind the momentum in your community already, get behind where the capital's flowing, get behind where the energy's flowing, because there's plenty of funding out there. You just have to go find it and be hungry for it. And it's a lot to navigate. And that's where the phone calls and the resources and the organizations, Inclusive for one, has been a tremendous asset for us. They're constantly navigating the funding field and letting us know how to best position ourselves for that.
Oh, I just want to add one other thing, and that is do the economics for your borrower. Sometimes sustainable energy is much cheaper than coal or other fossil fuel generated electricity.
Just quickly on resources to identify funding. Visa's recently partnered with Fundika. I'm not sure if many of you have heard of Fundika, but it's an open source platform that collates funding opportunities from across government, municipal foundations on theme and issue area specific lending opportunities. So highly recommend Fundika, Fundica.
Great information. Thank you very much. So in closing, I want to do a quick lightning round and go across the panel one by one. My lightning question is, briefly, what is the main reason for credit unions taking a slower or more deliberate path towards sustainability, and how can we speed it up?
Can you hear really quick? Avoid greenwashing. So do it deliberately, do it purposefully, and do it defensively.
I would say start having a baseline. So if you don't have anything, we're going to actually a little bit of advertising. We're working on a handbook with key performance indicator based on our experience. So for those who are starting their sustainability journey, start it. And then for the ones more advanced, there's frameworks that you can follow that are pretty well defined. So the PCAF and TCFD. So I would advertise for transparency and accountability. Thank you.
I'd say use your secret sauce. I mean, the unique special aspect of credit unions is the cooperation amongst members and amongst institutions that is unseen elsewhere. And so leverage that unique special sauce, collaborate, cooperate, and do lessons learned amongst each other. It is through that that you will have the intended impact and reach you are hoping to have.
Don't be afraid to lead. Think about what's going to happen to your members in 10, 20, 30 years if you don't lead now on sustainability.
Hello, and as the millennial in the room, there's a couple of us. I would say get millennials in the decision-making table, bring in the next generation, trust them, and get out of their way.
Fantastic. Thank you guys so much. It's a wonderful, diverse, knowledgeable panel, and you've really contributed a lot. Thank you very much. I know in North Carolina, our residents, our financial institutions, including the North Carolina State Employees Credit Union, have to deal with droughts, flooding, extreme heat, weather events, wildfires, all of it, air quality, water quality. It is right at the tip of all of our minds. And everything that we can do to help drive this change is very important. So thank you for what you do.
All right, round of applause for our panel. Thank you all so much.